Yeah, looks like it's working. So, yeah. Zach, do you want to take over slides for me for just a second?
Yeah.
I don't think we should actually start right yet until like 5:30 exactly, but we got like 2 minutes here.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
So we'll just hang out for a little bit longer. Joe, you've got to come up here too eventually.
Yeah, I have a question about the live demo. Like, how do I switch the?
Oh, that's a good question. It won't work on the live stream, but what you can do is you'd be able to take the HDMI cable
Okay.
that's plugged in here, and then I think that will also work because then you'll be casting to this,
Okay.
and actually, hold on.
Do you use Hangouts, Google Meet?
Or I can skip it, but up to you.
Yeah, I don't think we're planning to do a live demo.
No.
That's fine. I can skip it, and I probably just add some screenshots.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Good thinking.
We are live.
Okay, we're live. Okay, good. Cool. Well, I'm still gonna. We'll start.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for being here at the first Vontive Innovation Forum. It's not specifically just Vontive, of course. We want to do more of these in the future, bring in more of the rest of the Seattle tech community, everybody who's working on innovative things here. I think we can all agree we can all stand to learn something, and the field is changing so frequently that it only makes sense. Let's bring ourselves together, let's make each other better, share good stories, and I think for most of what I think, at least from the Vontive side, we're planning to do today, we're not showing you, hey, look, we started off in a direction and we picked the right direction from the very beginning and look how great we are, it totally worked. We're hoping to show you that we actually tried things, the technology and the technology ecosystem changed, we had to pivot, and then we pivoted in this direction. And actually, because it's AI and the field is so new and changing so frequently, what we actually needed to do is pivot 2 or maybe 3 or even more times. We probably actually lost track of how many times we had to do a pivot. But it eventually resulted in something really good. And it also helped us develop sort of a philosophy around these things, which we've adhered to for about a year and a half since we started this project of, we don't really want to lock into any one thing. We want to stay nimble so that we can always pivot when we need to. We can always be ready to have a paper come out and say, oh, that looks cool, let's try it. And then the papers often don't work, or the results don't match the empirical results that we get. So I guess all that's a long-winded way to say, thank you for coming. There's going to be more of these, and the idea is not to do a sales pitch for how great we are, but to show that we're learning, we're all learning together, and there's intermediate value that we're delivering here, and I think that's hopefully what we plan to show. That said, we do have some really exciting experts here to help us convey that message tonight. So we've got Sahil Agarwal. Let's all give him a hand. Yeah, so he'll join Vontive full-time only about 6 months ago, but he's been with us for almost 2 years, I would say. And in that time, he's done a great job helping us out with our AI products and also the ML products, which we'll just briefly touch on: scoring, risk mitigation, things like that. But thank you, Sahil. He's gonna sort of give us more of that historical context for the Vontive project. We've also got Zach Lubier, who is currently off screen helping with my slides, but full stack engineer who's implemented a lot of the data handoff between sort of what the data team does. I manage the data team, but what the data team does, and then what sort of our internal tools in our portal sort of shows to users. But that's how it started. He's taken it way further than that, and hopefully in the panel discussion you might be able to fill in more on that sort of collaboration between the data side and the portal side, full stack engineer, and how that unfolded for you. And then you got me. I don't actually plan to speak very much tonight besides this opening diatribe, and hopefully I can sort of hand this off as soon as possible. But I run the data products team at Vontive. We're basically responsible for BI, pricing, automated underwriting support tools, anything having to do with predictive modeling and AI, that sort of thing. And then we try and expose all this stuff as APIs that other people can use when they're ready. It's been a pretty good run the past 3 years, and like I say, I'm pretty proud of what we've done, but it's just always learning still. And then Joe is a professional at Newfront. Hopefully you'll be able to come up here in a little bit for the panel and for your own demo. But Newfront is a company specialized in insurance brokerage as a platform. So lots of complicated insurance contracts come in, lots of insurance policies on the other side are ready to be matched, and hopefully I've not done it justice, but you know, you'll have more to say on that. And yeah, so this is what we've done. I think we can go ahead and advance. And you might need to move the mouse over to this screen and then press, and it's on the left. Does it not? The arrow, how about the arrow key?
No.
Slight technical difficulties. You can go to what your actual slide.
Oh man, is it because the streaming doesn't like it?
I'm not sure. It was working when we tried it earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see.
Pivot.
Yeah, I guess this is another case of like needing to pivot on technology. I am curious if maybe.
Oh, there we
go. Okay,
Got
we
it.
fixed it. Wonderful. Okay. I think advance. Go ahead and advance one more. We've kind of explained what data and Vontive is. Okay, so as we mentioned, we've got forecasting. This is not the focus of today's talk, but just another thing of like, this might be a future talk, so just keep your ears burning because we're very excited about our ability to forecast for real estate metrics nationwide. Price per square foot, inventory levels. Inventory is going to be huge this year. Interest rates by our competitors and ourselves, of course. The you know, different types of properties, the mix that are coming to market, the overall median price. We're into forecasting all of that. We produce great maps, and we'll direct you to the blog very shortly to see more of that. Risk scoring. So obviously in investor mortgages, investors are pretty savvy. You don't want to turn your eyes, turn your back on them. Not that we don't trust them and love them, but it's a trust but verify kind of situation. And then automation, which is actually the focus of today's talk. And so we think of that mostly as like this first innovation for our company with AI, not the last one, but this first one was really about how do we take this vastly different corpus of documents. You know, we've got probably 40, 45 different types of documents that really matter for loan underwriting. And, you know, not only 45 types of documents, but 3,000 counties and all the different insurance companies and all the different title companies. Everybody's producing their documents in a slightly different way. You'd never be able to make templates for all of them. How do we automate this? Because this is probably 30 to 50% of the actual time it takes to underwrite a loan. It's just getting a handle on these documents, reading them through, and there's a problem of scale there. I guess that's the only way to say it. So we'll go ahead and advance one more. And I think with this, I'm kind of ready to hand things off to Sahil. So
Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you, Wolf. Thanks for the great introduction. My name is Sahil, for everyone who doesn't know me, and I work as a machine learning engineer at Vontive. I've been with the company for about 2 years now, and over that time, I've seen and helped develop a lot of the machine learning products and AI products that we use in Vontive's tech stack. Additionally, I've kind of had a firsthand view of some of the challenges and solutions that are required when employing these domain-specific products within production environments. So just as Wolf had kind of introed, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the automation-based products and how we use AI to create and facilitate these automation-based products. So starting off with our actual problem statement, and the problem that we aim to solve is we want to be able to scale the amount of loans we process as a company and originate without having to scale the actual workforce that it comes along with that. And so whenever we have a loan come in for origination, along with that comes a lot of documents, and these documents need to have an expert underwriter actually go through them and parse out a lot of different data and verify that that data is correct for the loan to be actually pushed through and approved. And you can kind of see the natural bottleneck in this entire pipeline, and that happens to be this manual data extraction process. Manual data extraction just requires that human labor capital, and that capital is expensive. So if we can improve our technology and we're able to automate this process, that makes our scalability 100% better. And so within loan origination, there is kind of a unique challenge in that the documents have a huge amount of variety. This means that whenever like whenever these documents come in for an actual loan, they never follow a standardized template. So on a loan-by-loan basis, we might see a document that looks completely different. And to the right here, we actually see a great example of this. So these 4 documents are tax certificates. These certificates are required for every single loan that Vontive originates, yet we can see they look completely different. And the yellow highlighting actually is showing the data that is required to be extracted from these documents by an underwriter. And we want to automate this process without having to make strict templates or use some small model to actually extract these. And so what does the landscape look like, and why are these existing solutions for automating data processing and these documents kind of falling short? And the big reasons are they're not using models that are intelligent enough to do context-aware extractions. By that, to give a good example of that, I guess, is whenever we have a document come in for underwriting, they're never specifically giving key value pairs for the necessary data that we need to extract. Some data point, such as the parcel number, which is something that uniquely identifies a property, it may come in as various different field names. It's not always called parcel number. It could be called map number or property number. And we need a model that's smart enough to understand the context of our extraction and extract this data field given the context. And so some of the,
Sorry, I got it wrong.
some of the different offerings that we actually tried in this were Google's Document AI, AWS's Bedrock Data Automation, some open source document automation such as DocOwl, and then also some generic AI solutions. And we found that none of them were able to actually extract the specific domain-based data fields that we needed them to really pull out. And this kind of leads us to our solution, which is that we're going to go ahead and build something in-house to pull out this data. We realized that, over the years of originating investment loans, we've become experts in the topic, and who better to build this product than us? And yeah, it's kind of where does that expertise really come into play, and where does that data come into play? So over about 7 years of loan origination, Vontive has collected about 60,000 plus documents that are related to loan underwriting. And all of these documents have been expert verified and expert labeled to generate about 1 million plus labels. And this is kind of the grounding framework that we started building our product based off of. What we did was we took some of these smaller llama models that came out in around 2023, and we started to fine-tune these models based on all of this data. We said, hey, model, take a look at this data, and we want you to pull out these specific data points as if you were an underwriter. And being able to give it all these supervised learning examples allowed these models to better learn the actual context of what we're trying to pull out. And we no longer saw some of those problems of, hey, this property number might be called a map number or a parcel number on a different document. The models actually learned to still identify that this is the relevant data that we need to extract. And so we would actually say that after fine-tuning some of our models on our proprietary data, we were seeing some state-of-the-art results compared to any of the other solutions that we had tried in the past. But as always, this stuff always has some production challenges. And so the big ones for us were that many of the documents that we were processing had a handwritten component, or they came in as like low-quality, grainy images. And this gave us kind of a limitation with the optical character recognition that we were using to pull the text out of the documents and pass them to the large language models. Additionally, when we use retraining and fine-tuning on each of these different document types, we add an immense amount of overhead for extending this to new documents. And then big tech came along and basically ruined our entire workflow. And so what happened was we decided, okay, we have these really cool fine-tuned models. We have some issues with the OCR capabilities, and we have some issues with the retraining, but these are things that we can solve. We started to develop our own proprietary OCR libraries that were better able to handle the documents that we were dealing with. But unfortunately, when we went to actually go ahead and use them on AWS, we found out that the next generation of frontier models had just released. And these were the ones that were really bringing into multimodal contexts and being able to process images, and they were just too good to ignore. So although it's not actually ruining it, it felt that way to us because we had put in a lot of work into fine-tuning these models, and now we're going to have to kind of pivot our entire direction to integrate with some of this multimodal usage, or multimodal usage, sorry. Yep, so multimodal LLMs, those released around, really in production for API usage, I think around early 2024, and this is kind of when we started to integrate them. We realized we can kind of bypass the entire OCR stack and start feeding directly into the models the images themselves. And the big thing that this preserves is the structure of the document. So for some of the documents that we saw earlier, you see there's a lot of tables, there's a lot of markings, and there's a lot of, I guess, layout-specific context that is important for understanding the information in the document. And when we pass the actual image to the LLM, rather than the OCR version of the text, we're able to preserve a lot of that information and give the LLM itself a better input so that it can have a better output when it extracts the data. And then Then the other big thing that we kind of moved towards is using an agentic workflow for the way we were prompting our LLMs. And what this means is, rather than take a small LLM and fine-tune it on a specific data type, what we did is we decided to use these very large frontier models and specialize them into a small part of the data extraction pipeline. And we found that using this kind of prompting philosophy, we were able to really boost the accuracy of our LLM extractions. And kind of just showing like a flow chart of how this extraction pipeline actually works. The first thing we do is we have a validation agent. So what that does is a PDF comes in. This may be a PDF that a borrower has uploaded. And we want to validate that it's even relevant to the loans that we are underwriting. So the first thing we do is we pass it to an agent and ask it, is this actually a relevant loan? And if it is, then this agent can pass the document to the next agent, which is going to do a classification. So there are like 50 plus different types of documents that we actually want to parse through. And we need to classify the document that came in as one of these different types of documents. So this agent knows, hey, these are the ones that are relevant. Let's try to figure out what I just got. Then from there on, we actually summarize the document. And this was an interesting one to us because this really boosted the accuracy in an unexpected way. We found out that if we ask an agent to give us a summary of like the PDF that we're uploading or the image that we're uploading, we can boost the accuracy of the extraction that happens in the first following step. And so what we did is we had the summarization agent actually summarize the PDF document. And finally, we extract the actual text that we are looking for or the data that we're looking for. And how did this actually affect underwriting? So once we kind of came into putting the whole process into production, we found that we're cutting processing time by almost 75%. And this is what really felt good in validating our entire project, because we met with some of our stakeholders, and some of the quotes that really stood out from there were, the underwriters now get mad whenever the service is down because they're so heavily reliant on it. And they've also kind of changed their workflow to better adapt using the LLM tools and some of the wait times of the LLM tools as they go ahead and process documents. Additionally, we do see some business impacts as well. Faster loan approvals, which kind of leads to higher customer satisfaction. We see lower operational costs, and then we also hope that we can scale out the amount of throughput of loans that we can put into our underwriting pipeline.
Nice.
And then, yeah, kind of to show the accuracy over time as we kind of built and rebuilt the system. When this is production accuracy, so this is actually not just the textbook of, hey, we had this data set and then how many extractions did the LLM actually get right? This is directly, when we were in production, how many times did the underwriter not actually modify whatever the LLM pulled out versus what it did? And we see with our first llama fine-tunes, we were at about 67% accuracy. And then near the very end, we got all the way up to around 87%, which is what we're hovering at right now. And given these numbers, we actually do believe that our data sets, when we purely just extract from raw text, we do get higher accuracies than this. But when we're in production, there are certain things that kind of lead to the fact that underwriters tend to change or have to modify some of the information that's not actually found within the document, and those count against these accuracies.
So like another document comes in later.
Precisely, yeah. Another document might take precedence over an original extraction, and that would be marked as wrong within these accuracies.
If you don't factor that in, what do you think the accuracy rate, if you're just counting raw accuracy?
So it depends on the actual document type that we're extracting from, but from our best extractions, we're almost about 95%.
That's really
Mm-hmm. And so along with kind of seeing just the raw accuracy numbers, there's a lot of other metrics that are important to monitor during production. And so the next thing we did was we built out an LLM monitoring dashboard. And this basically shows us on a per field basis how are our LLM extractions doing. And then we're also able to actually monitor the continuous improvement of the LLM and how the accuracies are changing over time as we slowly iterate on the product and iterate on the prompts themselves. Yep. And so the next thing I kind of want to talk about is actually democratizing the development. So to summarize, we came out with this product, we did some R&D on it, and then now we have it in production. And we want to see how can we continue to improve and service the lifestyle of this product, as well as improve user trust and the user experience in the product. And an interesting way that we kind of came up with doing that is democratizing development and essentially making everyone a prompt engineer. And do you want to move forward one more? So the next step we kind of did is we created a dashboard that allows for the actual underwriting team themselves to interact with the product and help in the development of the prompts. So this is kind of an interesting challenge because we don't want to remove any of the rigor of the data science that goes behind actually going through prompt development and making sure these prompts are actually accurate against data sets. But we want the experts who are actually using the product and see what it does on a day-to-day basis to be able to give their feedback and directly change their product. So what we came up with is this kind of, this platform where the end user can go ahead and edit any of the prompts that they're given, and they can push them out to us for us to review and one-click commit into the prompts that are being used by the LLM in production. Granted, how I mentioned earlier, we don't want to lose any of the rigor of the data science, so we still preserve the fact that any type of document type, any document type can still be checked against an entire data set that can be customized for whatever we're actually trying to do. And we can have these safety barriers of people can't actually add prompts that would lower the accuracy of the LLM on different data sets.
So what we're seeing here is a file and then a result.
Exactly, yes. So right here what we're seeing is we have input files and then target data under the input files that the LLM is trying to actually extract. And if we go to the next slide here, what we'll see is kind of the result of running a data set through where we have this, we generate these log files, and within these log files we can see every single PDF that we put through, the extraction that the LLM did, and then the target extraction that we're looking for. And if we move to the next one, we can look at any specific extraction and also see the amount of time that it took, and then the reasoning and rationale that the LLM took to why it got the answer that it did. Yep, so the next thing we get to is kind of the cost of AI, and this is where we learned that initially we were actually getting pretty low costs, especially when we were doing text-based OCR extractions only, but as we moved into using more of the vision-based models, our token counts kind of exploded. And then the next thing is agentic flow also exploded that token cost. But what we realized is a lot of these costs can be greatly reduced if you start using prompt caching, which is something that Amazon Bedrock, which is what we use for most of our most of our LLM models, is rolling out the end of this quarter. And so that's what we're looking forward to really bring those costs down. And we've also realized that while AI is expensive, not using it is not going to allow us to remain competitive in this industry. Finally, kind of what are the key takeaways that we've really learned over our process of building these AI tools? And the first one is definitely be ready to rebuild and pivot very quickly. The LLM and generative AI space in general changes like a snap of a finger, and I would say, and I'm sure Zach might be able to attest to this, the entire product has been rebuilt probably 5 or 6 times within a week each time. And so do be ready to do that kind of thing, as some companies such as Anthropic might just drop a bombshell that makes all your previous R&D not as relevant as it once was a week ago. The second thing is keeping a human in the loop during this product development is pretty important, especially as you work towards having autonomously verifiable tasks. So something like document data extraction is not entirely verifiable without having that human in the loop right at the end, because we don't know the answers and we have no way to verify the answer even once we actually extract it. Having a human in the loop near the end actually allows us to move past this barrier. And then finally, we find that when we talk to the stakeholders and the actual end users of our product, that trust is really key. So we want to facilitate a good amount of trust within the product, and the way we think that's best done is by giving the stakeholders a direct role in the development of the product. Gen AI is actually very good at facilitating that because it kind of allows anyone to contribute meaningfully to the product and the product development, specifically through our prompt development kind of dashboards. And leveraging this is a great way to really improve that trust.
Really nice.
Thank you guys so much. So if anyone has any questions, yeah, more than happy to take them now.
That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I just want to highlight here, if you do scan this QR code, it will allow you to submit questions if you'd like to the Slido. Anybody who's here in the live stream, or here in the live present audience, is going to obviously have the ability to just shout your question out. So you don't need to. But I thought, this is the first of many, so I just wanted to try this one out to start with. So yeah, thank you, Sal. That was great. Thank you, Zach, as well, for your work on this. I think we might be ready to bring Joe up, possibly.
Question now, or?
Oh, I think we could, I guess, take questions now on this.
We can
Yeah,
take questions now.
before the
Zach,
panel.
wanna just come up here too then?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do have a question about the
Take it.
data extraction. Like,
Absolutely.
It looks like a lot of those are flattened fields, right? Like, what I mean that is, do you have any embedded, like the kind of embedded JSON or fields, nested JSON fields?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
actually we absolutely do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to take that one.
Yeah. I mean, we actually have quite a lot of those because as we find most often it's for like addresses or like contact information. We found that is all very like related. So if you just ask for like a street address and then a zip code, it has to know that it's like related to the same address. So if you just ask for like one, but there's like multiple addresses in this document, or same for like contact information, if it's just trying to find like one person. So yeah, we were able to, to actually, we could get like however many, nested levels of data extraction.
Like you might need the realtor's phone number, but you also need the title person's phone number and the buyer's phone number, and they're all on the one document.
Yeah.
And which one is nested? Is that like you have a object for the person and the person
basically
having phone and email or something?
Yeah. So you'd have, like an example is like the insurance agent would be like the object, and then you'd have first name, last name, email, phone number, address,
And then
whatever.
address itself is an object inside of that, which will have its own fields.
And does that democratizing prompting also support JSON, like the nested JSON?
So that is actually an interesting question, and if we go up, we did have to consider some of that if we go back to the images. And so you'll see there is a advanced options at the bottom for each of these fields, and it's cut off there, but there is actually support for that. That's something we're thinking won't really be touched mostly by the underwriting or the end user, but it's there for the developers themselves who better understand that. I think the nesting objects that Zach brought up, they're less so recursively nested, if that was more so your question, and more so just how we decided to structure data. But in our particular use case, most of the data is relatively flat, and we don't have any really recursive types of relationships that we need to extract.
Got it, I see. Because I think the reason, something we are also thinking and wondering is like, it's probably easy to, I don't have a good example for your case, but my point is, let's say you have a nested JSON, and some fields in that JSON is probably a little bit easy to describe.
Yes.
But some of them is a little bit hard to describe, at least in our case.
Could you give me a more, like, an example of maybe your use case?
So for example, we have something like in insurance, there's a lot of things called included, excluded. And for a certain, we call that schedule limits. And then, but in one document, you can have a lot of included for different type of fields or different objects.
Okay.
And then you want to say, okay, for this specific object, I want to say included. And then, but another object is actually excluded.
would those be nesting the JSON or
There are different objects. That's
adding metadata to the JSON? Because we do actually add metadata to particular fields during the extraction sometimes. And we found that like we have a decent kind of flow for prompting to add metadata that goes alongside an extracted data point. Additionally, we're also able to kind of like add patterns, or the most interesting kind of data fields for us are when we're not particularly pulling out, hey, like get this person's name or get this tax amount, but here's a big document. Can you tell me how many different times a sale happened or a sale was listed within this document? And understand like the actual document itself and go ahead and count. And so those are the really interesting cases we kind of come across. Thank you. Please.
Kind of in the same theme of democratizing development. You mentioned having humans in the loop, which I think is really interesting, really important. One of the questions that I had is when humans find errors or make corrections,
Sure.
have there been any themes to those corrections? And then kind of within the context of those themes, what are your thoughts with regards to making a human-driven agent or an agent that has the themes of the corrections that are routinely popping up? What are your thoughts there?
Sure. So actually, yes, to answer your question, definitely there were very similar themes, and that's kind of what inspired us to create a platform to democratize that development and actually let the underwriters help with the prompting process. So kind of to explain like the history of that particular part of the project, first we just had a Slack channel which was called like AI support, and like underwriters would just spam it and be like, hey, AI pulled out this wrong, why? AI pulled out this wrong, why? And then sometimes we'd respond, we'd be like, this is the prompt we're using, and then the underwriter would be like, this prompt is just wrong. Like why are you doing it this way? Like this makes no sense to me. And it would be something that like to us as engineers, we were like, oh, this seems right. I think a great example of this would be, we're like, oh, we're pulling out the insurance agent. This should be like the insurance company's agent, right? And it would be something completely different. It would be like, no, we just call it that, and it actually ends up being a different part of the field. And so we did get a lot of requests of, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Why is this pulling out this way? Can you help us fix this? And these are things that we saw having a pattern to these requests coming in, and why we kind of wanted to allow the end users to actually have control over what they're seeing coming out of that LLM.
That makes sense.
In terms of, could you be a little bit clearer about that second part of your question? What you meant by the human in the loop on the correction side?
Yeah, sure. Is there kind of a theme? So like you saw similar themes of people asking for these corrections and changes to the prompt. My question is, going one level higher, is that a prompt in itself? The kind of person, that identity that asks those type of questions. And is that kind of, could you use that as like a self-correcting action of like, oh, here are the things that I might see that I'm looking for, that I have seen problems occur, and add that into the process as kind of like a pre-error check or an error finding process?
So there's some interesting literature on reinforcement learning based prompt optimization, which like when you have something like a supervised learning use case where you have a data set and then a lot of documents, there are algorithms that you can use to basically, like it's kind of like a genetic algorithm or reinforcement based. I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember the specifics of the paper, but it sees where like a prompt got an answer wrong and then comes up with a bunch of modifications of that prompt and then tries to evolve it over time. So I think there is definitely a use case for that kind of like autonomous repair of the prompt. It's not something we've really spent too much time looking into, as I think the value of developing that entire system versus just having like, editing prompts occasionally, it might not be.
And like we
really
were talking about earlier with having the autonomous repair, the token count skyrockets, right? So trying to
Exactly, yeah. Another good point is that when you're genetically modifying these prompts with another LLM, you have to consider the costs of repeatedly prompting the other LLM as well, versus just taking like maybe 2 minutes to repair the prompt.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we did find like significant accuracy gains, like even after just a couple rounds of like prompt engineering and changing the prompts. So yeah, we haven't found, at least so far, a need to invest heavily there.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. Please.
Yeah, so you described at one point after you'd already kind of done one round of development. These modal AIs,
Multimodal. Yes.
multimodal. Can you kind of give a high-level overview of like how that changes,
Absolutely.
or what the difference between what you were working with before and what you're working with now?
Sure. Yeah, I think I could have been a little bit more specific with that. So what we did before is we decided to fine-tune our own models. So if you're familiar with Llama models, which is a series of open source large language models that Meta released around 2023, and these are much smaller than your traditional Claude or ChatGPT. And so their capabilities are lesser, but because they're open source, you can take whatever training they had and continue it with your own data sets. And so this is what we were originally using. And these models are strictly text-based. They can't process image data or anything like that.
Okay.
And then the next generation of really these AIs came out, or sorry, these LLMs came out, and those ones were more openly making picture and voice and other multimodal inputs processable. And so that's really what we switched to. So originally we were using optical character recognition to extract the text from the documents,
Right, and then
whereas
feeding that in.
later we could just give the document itself in its native form. And if anyone's ever worked with optical character recognition before, I'm sure you know some of the pain points of that. I see some nods in the crowd. So yeah, using the native image of the document itself allows us to kind of really preserve the structure of specifically tables, preserve the structure of like check marks and stuff, which are often found in a lot of the documents that we're using.
And then another term that you used I wasn't quite sure on was, you said a frontier model, I think?
So that's just, I think in industry, that's just being termed as like the latest release or the latest generation of models. If you see like, we went from like ChatGPT like 3.5 to like 4 to 4.0, so yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just a colloquial term. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You mentioned briefly, I was wondering if you could elaborate more on this, but the democratizing model has an element where it wouldn't necessarily override previous functions. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So the thing is, when we allow like the end user to actually go ahead and update the core functionalities of the product itself, we definitely want to make, oh please go ahead. We want to make sure that there's kind of safeguards around that. So one form of that is any change that an end user pushes, it has to be reviewed by an actual developer. It can't, it doesn't just go straight into like the main branch or something, right? But additionally, we can define data sets of like a large number of PDFs as well as their ground truth extractions of the data. And when a user decides to change or add prompts, we can make sure that, hey, this is what the LLM's accuracy was before they changed the prompts. Say it's like 80%, right? And now that they've changed the prompts, it's 75. We're just gonna auto reject that. Like those changes did not help the actual extraction. They lowered our accuracy overall. So that's kind of where that comes
Does that
from.
retroactively scan like other situations essentially?
It's more or less like you can just keep track of like the best, like on this data set, our LLM is currently like 80% accurate, right? So if you go ahead and change the prompts and then we rerun over the data set and now you're 75% accurate, you know that those prompts didn't actually help the way everything's changing.
So, a question for you.
Please.
This goes to, well, it's two parts. One is the model being able to correct data that it thinks is inaccurate, and its ability to do that without human involvement or minimal human involvement. Do you envision a world where your agents run the data extraction? Let's take an insurance binder as an example.
Sure.
So there's the address of the property that's insured, there's a mortgagee clause for the lender, lender name. There's a policy number, there's an insured amount.
Absolutely,
based on
yes.
replacement cost or loan amount. The model's not sure on two of those things, or it knows it has to be accurate, so could an agent call the insurance broker and say, hey, I'm an automated agent for Vontive or whatever. Would you just verify that these numbers are correct, and if they're not, and then, okay, heard that, let me read it back to you, great, and then it pops it into the database.
Absolutely, yeah.
So is it possible, and what will it take to get there?
So kind of to, I guess, take those two parts individually, I think possibility-wise, absolutely. Especially when we see a lot of these new innovations in the AI agents and like the agentic kind of use cases of the newest models. Specifically, I think tool use is a big part of enabling this kind of stuff, and which is basically at any point, you can almost add a breakpoint to the model and ask it to call an external tool, which is programmatically performing some function. So for something as you're stating, it wouldn't be too difficult because currently what we tell the models to do is, hey, if you're unsure, return null. Well, rather than return null, let's return this tool call. And we can predefine these tool calls as call agent for blank field. And you can just predefine, hey, just have a template of this is what we want to ask this agent. And that shouldn't actually be too difficult. So there's not too much work involved in getting the models ready for that kind of thing. It's more so building the infrastructure around it. And then also, I think the concern that might be probably reasonable is I don't know how available the other end of the line will be to respond to an LLM a lot of times.
When you say the other end of the line, like the insurance agent picking up the phone?
Exactly. Whether it's
being
picking up
willing
the
to
phone.
talk to a model or both?
Yeah, whether you send an email or whether you send a phone, I can see those being kind of ignored. But from the LLM tech like point of view and the tech point of view, it's definitely possible.
And would you need to like hang the whole parsing process like during, or you just do it after?
So you could asynchronously
Yeah.
have the function calls happen. So you can just do the tool calls and then those will happen asynchronously. We'll continue our LLM parsing and then we can just go back and
Because
append.
you could theoretically, like in a dashboard, if there's like six information elements, I used to call them data elements, I'll just use that, like
Yeah.
6 data elements, the 2 that aren't filled in yet, you could just put in, reaching out to get this or something. I mean, there's, presumably a model would be trainable to like write into that field, like,
Yeah.
waiting on this. Or,
Yeah, it would actually be simple enough that like the model doesn't even need to do much there.
Yeah.
So you can just have a pre-built template for every type of data set. So like, hey, I'm calling about this blank part of the data. I'm just unsure if this is the correct number. Could you please verify it?
Because
And-
like,
Have the AI promise that I'm not fraud, don't worry.
that's like a legitimate question. Is like, are humans comfortable interacting and
Yeah.
how do you get them? But I think that ability to automate the follow-up that's a big part of getting labor productivity
Absolutely.
out of this type of technology.
I do think that that's definitely possible, and I do think that's actually probably the future of where these kind of technologies should go and would go.
It's on our roadmap.
Yeah, perfect. Please.
One of the long-term challenges in evaluating machine learning models is training set bias, where we don't want to evaluate the model on things it has been trained on.
Yes.
Test set, of course. The thing that makes me nervous about allowing humans to do prompt engineering is not it was 80% and it dropped to 75% case. It was 80%, we allowed a human to do prompt engineering, now it's 82%, but this is a human who has at some point in the past seen a non-trivial fraction of the documents in the training set.
Yes.
Do you have any mitigation strategies there, any concerns there?
No, I think that's actually a really, really good point, right? Because you do bring up the fact that just having accuracy as a safeguard would be completely ineffective. Because if a human, for example, has seen any part of the data set, they could be like, well, if document is XYZ document, pull out this number, right, in the prompt, and then it's just always gonna, it's like echo 5 or something, right? And then you've just blown apart like that entire safeguard. Which is right now why currently the implementation is really like, one, we know the entire underwriting team, so hopefully no one will do that to us. But 2, it's that's kind of why I think for right now you definitely still need to have the developer at the end of the day take a look at everything and make sure it's still reasonable. I'm not sure if I have a direct answer on how you could automate that entire process in terms of mitigating some of those effects, because I think there'll always be a workaround that could happen if some bad actor decided to go ahead.
I worry about the subtle or unconscious bias rather than the bad actor scenario or the the rig demo scenario.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen this document before.
Yeah. That is definitely a concern, because how do you keep it generalizable as well? Because someone might not, for any fault of their own, just decide to say, hey, I've noticed that documents that come from King County always have this specific issue. I'll just add that to the prompt and, you know, it'll be great. And then maybe King County changes it something, or like, you don't really want to add that much specificity into a machine learning model. Right now, I think for our own approach, it's best just left to like the developers actually reviewing all these changes that are coming in. Just having this kind of platform facilitates that. But at the end of the day, as a developer, you still have to make that call. I don't know if you have any thoughts, though. I'd actually love to
No,
hear
I
them.
have no solutions.
Thank you.
I was curious if you could touch more on the agentic AI, like the different agents and kind of what you're passing from one to another, and like what sort of context is lost. Because I was thinking maybe one of the good things of having it all under one agent is like it has full contextualization of like the start process to end process. And if you've discovered it's not good for it to know all of the context, good for it to be more localized.
Zach, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I mean, technically under the hood, it is still just like one agent. So like between I think it's like start with verification and classification.
Could you go to the agent?
You know, so we first like send the entire contents of the document to the first agent, and then we send both the response that we got from the verification as well as the original context of the whole document as well to the secondary.
Okay, so
to the second
looking here,
agent.
the validation agent and the extraction agent, or the extraction agent has all of the context that the previous agents, how they made their decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that actually is pretty important to
they're not like
the
black
actual
boxes to each
success.
other.
Yeah, if you only asked each one in isolation, it wouldn't be able to do its job like
That's what I was
that
thinking,
well. But when you pass I think Sahil touched on, you know, summarizing the document first, like bringing those key points to the top, like actually helps with the final data extraction, because most of the time we're asking for like the key points. You know,
So
there's
you're not
obviously
just-
some.
You're not just passing the results, you're passing the thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Yep. The cool thing with the agents is you can kind of just choose what you're passing to who, and that's really what defines an agent. Like, agent's kind of a fancy word for really just saying, hey, we're just very specifically asking what we're going to prompt and then giving it like a memory and letting it like kind of autonomously do stuff. And so really what we're doing is between each stage we inject specific prompts that like help the next part of the process, and we can strip out any or unnecessary information.
So the context window remains, just the prompting updates?
Plus whatever we find necessary for the next stage, right? So for like maybe the last stage, it's not necessary to know whether it's valid or not as a document relevant to the loan, but it's still like relevant for it to know what the summary of the entire document was. So we can choose those kinds of contexts.
Yeah, and also for like the classification, you know, we have 50 plus document types. You know, if we told like the summarization agent, if we didn't tell the summarization agent what type of document this is, then it would have a difficult time of like really understanding what is it supposed to do, like how does it know which fields are important. But by telling it like, okay, this is a tax certificate, now you know like these are the important fields that are usually found in tax certificates.
This also makes the cost slide a lot more intuitive, I think.
Yes.
Summary is mainly for the extract agent to understand the context, right? Because do you find that is actually directly helpful to extract information from the summary, or that's more just for context then?
So actually, I'm not sure. I know that adding the context or adding the summary boosts the accuracy of the extraction. How it's actually helping the end agent is kind of black boxed away a bit, right? But I wouldn't say that it's getting too much information directly from the summary, because the summaries, having seen them, are relatively brief a lot of times. I think it's just giving it more of a contextual awareness of the actual document it's processing, which just happens to, I guess, boost the likelihood that the next token is the correct one.
And how do you kind of restructure the context? You're like, do you just say this is a summary and then this is the original documents?
Yeah, so we give it the original document, then we also give it the summary, and then we tell it like, hey, this is this kind of document, here's the document, and then here's the summary of this document. Please pull out this field. And then we can individually ask a bunch of different fields with that same kind of pretext. And that's a big part of that. Pretext is what we want to cache away as well, so that we get like those cheaper token costs. pretty good, unless anyone had any last questions.
Well, that sounds good.
Awesome.
You feel good? All right, let's do it.
Great, thanks.
Great. By the way, Wolf, my wife said that she could barely hear.
Oh, maybe I move this over here.
Yeah. Do you have an extra mic? Oh yeah, there's no microphones.
Maybe if I move it.
Just using the. Or I can actually just let you know to move to the next slide.
Yeah, we don't have a mouse.
That's fine.
I'm wondering on the audio source, maybe I can find another. If I can add source plus audio input capture.
And by the way, are you using the Google Slides one?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, cool. Yeah, because I made a little bit editing there because we cannot do it live demo.
It's now trying to mix both of these, and we'll see if that's better. Seems better. Actually, I'll turn off this one. Okay. Now it's coming from the camera, so hopefully this will do better for us.
It's much better.
Okay. Thank goodness. Okay, good feedback. This is our first one, so we've got a lot of tech, things to work out. But okay.
All right, cool. We're all good. All right, cool. Hey everyone, my name is Joe, and I come from the company called Newfront. I will do some intro about Newfront, and so previously I worked for Airbnb, AWS, and so on. So being software engineer for about 10 years and so on. So can I get a quick hands up, like just to understand the audience here? How many of you guys are software engineer, tech, or all of you guys? And how many of you are data or business? Okay, okay, cool, awesome. And so next slide, please. I'll do a little bit quick intro. Oh, so this outline we can probably skip. And next slide, please. And so this is kind of a sales pitch, but anyway, I think it's good. It's important to still set the context here. Yeah, so Newfront basically is in a business insurance industry as a brokerage. So that's it. So because insurance has personal lines, like I guess for you guys, maybe you deal with both commercial lines and personal lines. If it's a personal investor, they were buying the personal lines. But if it's a kind of company buying the properties, they are using the commercial lines. So anyway, that's it. So what's the difference between Newfront? I think it's yet another insurance brokerage, but the major difference, I think it's very similar to Vontive. I think our story is similar, expertise plus technology. Yeah, just want to set the context. It's a little bit numbers here. We can probably skip this.
Are you sure? Like, they're great numbers.
Okay, so we can skip that. Just want to set the context. And yeah, so insurance has a lot of steps. It's like, I think it's very similar to Vontive. I think you guys have the, basically the ingestion, and then you need to actually processing those applications and underwriting. Same here, we actually have the application for the insurance and the renewal of the insurance. We have the stage to kind of, you need to select the carrier, because as a brokerage, maybe this is important to speak. Insurance brokerage does this thing. We take in the request from our clients. We're basically a two-sided market. We're matching the requirement and like this application of the insurance buying, and then we're matching the carrier. So that is important, because so there are two type of major things. I think you guys probably deal with a lot of underwriters, but we are not really an underwriter. We are actually something called insurance brokerage, basically taking in almost like an Airbnb for insurance. So we're taking in the request and then finding the carrier who would like to underwrite the business. So it's a matching business there. And then after the match is found, then we need to actually service that insurance already bought. And then because there could be a change to the insurance policy, there could be a claim, and there could be people asking for proof of this insurance and for the certificate and so on. So there's a bunch of post-process and document ingestion here. So a lot of those things, and then the incumbent is pen and paper, and then the story is same as you guys. All right, cool. Next slide, please. And then we're back to the major topic of this today, and then LM at Newfront. I would say the backstory here is like roughly similar timeline, I guess, with Vontive, 2023, and then after GPT 3.5, it started there, and then everyone started doing that. All right, next slide, please. I want to talk about the use case. I guess something maybe a little bit interesting here is I think Sahil actually talked about the data ingestion one. We call that data ingestion, but I think for Newfront, that is definitely one important use case, but there are some other things there. Some of those we are still exploring. Later, I think I can show some screenshots about some use case there. Maybe we can start with the data ingestion first. Basically, insurance policy have a bunch of data there, and they are actually structured. So we create a schema behind the scene to show the schema, and then we use those data, structured data, for a lot of the downstream applications. We can talk about those use cases later. And there is not a good way, an incumbent way to do those. And in fact, I would say maybe we have an even harder problem than Vontive, because a lot of our operation team, imagine, believe it or not, they don't even understand the insurance there. Because insurance is so difficult, because we deal with probably 100 different type of life coverage. We call that life coverage different type of insurance. And for a lot of those very specific terms, junior insurance people don't even understand. So then we don't even have a good ground truth. So data ingestion is something very interesting and hard. Another thing is comparison is basically, what I mean that is you compare two data sets. The data sets could be the documents, and you compare the document to a document. And then you get the validation. You say this is compliant with another one, this is similar with another one, things like that. Q&A, basically, you can think it's like a chatbot. So we do have a lot of operation like that. And last thing is basically automate, almost like a autonomous way to do a bunch of work there. So I call it an agentic operation there. All right, next piece. Just do some quick, yeah, go ahead, next slide. So something called coverage gap analysis. This is a quick kind of demo of what we're doing using the LM. This is a comparison example here. I didn't show that. Imagine on the left-hand side, you have a policy from your prospect. And on the right-hand side, you have Newfront's defined standard. So let's say you're buying a property insurance for your case. And then property insurance having hundreds different type of something what we call endorsement, meaning there's this exclusion, that exclusion, and additional insurer waiver of subrogation, different type of legal terms in the insurance. Newfront as a brokerage, having a lot of people having those expertise, suggesting those as an investor, you should have these terms to basically cover yourself, to protect yourself. And then from the prospect side, we take in their insurance policy, and then we compare that insurance policy with our standard, saying, is your policy actually on par with our standard? If we say, boom, you have all these yellow flags, then we found a jackpot. Basically, our producer, our salespeople say, great, your incumbent sucks. And then, so that's something we call coverage analysis. Basically, then they have a talking point, basically. Then, in the past, they need to spend 20 hours actually to basically tear down the incumbent policy. And they have a specific team to really read those policies and then to label and annotate this problem, this is a problem there. But now I think they can actually quickly do it automatically. Next slide, please. So this is something called citation. Basically, we show, we found 5 problems in your cyber coverage. And the reason we chose cyber as our first usage is because cyber policy is basically very tricky to handle, because cyber policy, cyber insurance actually evolve
very quickly every single day, because this whole domain is not like the property insurance. This whole domain is new, and then the regulation is also new. Anyway, so we tell them why we think your software infringement is actually a problem, and then this is actually a citation to show you what the problem is, where that your document or your incumbent policy is talking about that, and then we show you what's the problem of that. Yeah, next slide please. And then this is a comparison view, say, this is actually talking about not just compared with our spec, but let's say if we quote for you, let's say, great, you are good to move forward with us, at least you as a prospect. Then we started to quote the insurance for you. Then these are the ones we actually got from different kind of insurance companies. They have this, they don't have that. So it's kind of a comparison, side-by-side comparison to show you we're doing our best due diligence to help you to get the coverage you deserve to have. Next slide, please. All right, that's that example. So something called Benji is on another side of the business. So we have two major business verticals. One is the one you saw, we call that business insurance. Another one is called total rewards or employee benefits. Basically, they're all insurance. Employee benefits is everyone here. Actually, you have your dental, you have your medical. So those are also bought from insurance brokerage. And as a broker, we also service those employee benefits insurance. And something called Benji basically is a benefits assistant. We have a mobile, we have Slack. This is actually Slack. So basically, you can imagine you have a chatbot. You ask, how many of you actually already have this kind of experience with your insurance company? Okay, cool. Then basically imagine, I think Cigna or whatever, I think if you, so in your insurance provider or the carriers, they may provide a mobile app to you, and then imagine this is basically in the mobile app, there's a functionality to say, ask questions about your own insurance. So basically, Allison is asking, hey Benji, how much do I pay for HDMP? And so that's kind of a simple example, but there's a lot of more example there. So it's conversational.
And this is at your company's internal Slack?
This is actually deployed to our client's workspace. Yeah.
Nice.
But now I think Slack is the first deployment, and later it's actually mobile is the next one. So we're launching mobile now. Something called certificate compliance. Let's say using Vontive as example, like basically for lender actually asks for a certificate of insurance. So I'm just making this up, but by the way, just let's say lender needs to say, give me your proof of insurance of your existing properties. So I know you are being covered, you buy insurance for your, let's say this is your second property, and then show me your first property's insurance. So what they do today is, let's say lender has this requirement, say, as an investor, you need to have a bunch of insurance requirements. You need to have 2 million of general liability, and then you give the certificate to your lender. And then you basically, the lender actually need to compare. In the past, it's a manual process. They don't really do that. But so something we're developing right now is basically for our client to manage the certificate, the insurance certificate they receive. So let's say our client is a lender, and they receive a bunch of insurance certificate for their clients. And then they basically do this thing called insurance certificate compliance check and tracking. So, yeah, I have actually, well, do you mind refresh the slides? Because I made a little bit editing there. And yeah, so if you go, yeah, actually start from the 43, then that's a new one. Right, thank you, Wolf. This last thing is called contract review. I was about to actually do the live demo, but anyway, I will just talk over that. Imagine for insurance, one of the big reason people buy insurance is to make sure they comply with the requirement of their clients. Let's use an example here. So let's say you are a builder, and then you get this insurance requirement. Let's say you are signing a contract with your landlord. You're building a house for your landlord. And then the landlord said, as a construction company, as a builder, you need to have this general liability insurance to cover, or workers' comp insurance to cover your workers. And then, so if something happens bad to your workers on my side, then you're covering yourself. That's the reason they are requiring insurance when people sign a contract. There's always an insurance section in those contracts there. And that's actually part of the biggest reason people buy the business insurance, because that's actually allowing them to do the work with compliance. And then usually as a brokerage, this is something we got request. They say, hey, Newfront, as my insurance guy, this is my contract. Help me to take a look if my insurance actually covers this contract requirements. So contract says, I need to have 2 million of general liability. Do I have it? And then we check for them. This is their requirement in the contract, and this is the actual coverage in their insurance. And in the past, this whole thing is not really structured. In the past, these whole thing are in the PDF documents, like basically you guys showed before. And so we have a data schema, we basically structure them. In the past, these are also documents. So, so this is a comparison to quickly show the red flag, and if you're good to go. In the past, this whole thing actually takes weeks, actually, for insurance professional to get back to the clients. And insurance usually is the last thing. I'm sure you in lending business, you guys know that. Like, at least for personal lines, it's kind of not the first thing people are thinking about. So then, a lot of times, our clients saying, I'm about to sign this contract today. Give me this, do you think this is good or not? And then our insurance people were like, oh, why you're talking to me last minute? And so, and then I need 2 weeks to get back to you. So the idea is to actually turn around very fast. And then this is actually showing them something called best practice, basically not doing those side-by-side comparison, but we're also calling out, we don't think you are using the industry standard language and so on. So this is additional benefits we're providing. All right, next slides, please. All right, so all those are just demo and just to give a visual. So I just want to quickly talk about a little bit technical, and I do want to stay high level because I don't know about the audience profile, but yeah, feel free to stop me here. I just want to share some takeaway from our development over those 2 years. First thing actually is echo back to Zahir actually just talk about the open source versus frontier model. We didn't really try Llama or Mistral. We thought about it, we thought about open source, but I think from the day one, because we don't really have that many sensitive data there, we do have the customers' data about their insurance, but those things are, I would say, semi-confidential. I wouldn't say they are like SSN, they are like the parcel number and like all the personal identifying number there. So it's sort of, and plus we sign enterprise deal with OpenAI and cloud, so technically they shouldn't actually use our data to train, but
yeah, I guess you never know. But
you never know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you never know. But yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway I think is to echo what you guys said. So right now we mostly, and we're not really doing a lot of the fine tuning there because what we found is the frontier model actually performs way better than our efforts there.
Yep.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So cost, maybe a little bit more about the cost. I think for us, I think experimentation actually is a new fun thing because we found we actually spend a lot on experimentation. So what I mean experimentation, later we will have the slides to talk about it, but anyway. RAG, I think, how many of you guys actually heard about RAG? Just want to, okay. So it's basically retrieval augmented generation. Basically, the idea is to, so imagine you have your personal or private information or data, but you want to ask the questions against those private data there. That's it, my way to say it, by using LM. What we found, actually initially we spent a lot of time on generation part, but we found later actually retrieval is much more important. So I'd say just retrieval it's actually taking a lot of experimentation. So if anyone wants to try it, I think it's already 25, a lot of people already tried it, but this is just takeaway we have is definitely you want to spend time on the chunking methods and then actually re-ranking. So basically to make sure whatever you retrieve still matters, that is I think the number one thing, because that is way important than the model you choose, the prompt you, because initially we spent time on the prompt engineering, a lot of you guys actually heard about it, but if you don't have the right data at the beginning to ask questions as a context, nothing actually matters. So yeah. Guardrail, so I think this is something you guys already touched about, is relevancy check and security. Basically, for us, we, in the Benji example, so when you ask the LM about questions, they actually shoot back something there. So we also have a relevancy check at the first step in the pipeline, but we also have a security check at the end to make sure LM is not really talking about something, let's say other people's information and so on. So yeah. Personalization is the next step. So initially what we did is for something called benefits assistance, the Benji's products, we allow people to ask, so maybe a little bit quick overview of how that works. There's a bunch of documents about the company's benefits and medical, dental, and so it's about, let's say 2025, Vontive has this dental benefits, and then I'm gonna ask questions against the dental plan. So everyone having the same or roughly share the same type of things, as long as you say, I have a high deductible, I have then I have this question. So you set the context in the question. But later, the next iteration is, I don't have to say which plan I have, because technically Newfront system having my plan, so I don't have to ask questions. That's what we call personalization. So basically, whenever we see this user, we pull in another set of the context data, not just the corpus of the plan documents. So then you basically having two sides of information. One is your personal data to have like your age, your gender, your plan, and then you have the general knowledge from the plan. And then if you ask any questions, so it's much more personalized. Next is actually, what we found is citation and reference is super important. So imagine in a mobile app, this is actually super interesting in mobile app. The question we generate actually having a lot of deep links. So those deep links, let's say you ask a question, just show me what kind of benefits my pet has. So you can actually dump a bunch of answers into the chat results. But the better result probably is giving a summary, but in the meantime also having a link to the actual pet's insurance. And then even better, you actually show the specific paragraph in that pet insurance, and then which actually relevant to the actual question. That one, then the question is, how do we do it? So in the chunking, so we do something called metadata. So we add the metadata into our chunks. Basically, the metadata will just add the deep links, and then so then we can actually link to it. Evaluation, I guess. What I want to say is, in the RAG, because you have a pipeline, so you want to actually evaluate different stage of the rack. So you want to evaluate your retrieval, and you want to evaluate your augmentation and the generation separately. And then sometimes we also evaluate everything all together if you have some interaction there. Yeah, so I know all these are just text, so I don't have beautiful slides here, but that's just a takeaway. Feel free to stop me.
We'll fix that in the question and answer part, I think.
Cool. Right, so something called structure and unstructured. Do you mind move to the next slide? I do have a diagram there. So I just want to show you guys how, maybe we can have a little bit more conversation later in the panel, but this is how we are doing things. So we have the raw documents, this is one scenario. Imagine that's an insurance policy document. And we have a structured data schema called insurance coverage data. You can imagine it's just something JSON. And we have a DSL, basically the domain specific language, but essentially it's JSON. And then we use those data actually for different purpose. So contract review we talk about because we use this data to compare with a contract. We use this data to generate something called summary of insurance. You can basically think these things are different presentation or different format of the same data there. It's just they need, for business purpose, they need to be different format. And we still believe that this structured data is very useful because it allows us to have the consistent data sets here. Because if, let's say, you have a point solution, you ask LM to say, generate this directly from this, generate this directly from that, then you may have discrepancy. It's like the worst case is you have, let's say, in the proposal, it's 100% correct. Proposal, by the way, is something in insurance before you, so basically you present the quotes to the client. Say, I got you 3 quotes. I believe this is the best one you need to take. So I propose this quote for you. So you list all the specification detail in that proposal. Imagine that is right, but later, 3 days later, let's say this client asks for a summary of insurance. It's another document. Let's say it's a subset of data of the policy proposal. But then something in that summary of insurance is different from the proposal. It will be a really horrible experience to the clients. So consistency, I think, is the number one reason we are actually still believing the structured data there. And do you mind going back to there? Because I think some people actually, I think there's still, in community, I think there's this conversation we really need structured data for a lot of these things. I think, anyway, that's at least in our current situation, I think we still believe in the structured data having these benefits there. So just want to call it out. Next slides, please. This is kind of just sharing, I think, accuracy versus the time to market. I think Zach and Sahil shared the 87%. That's something I'm also curious and we want to talk about because this is something we found as well. You probably want to always find a good balance and trade-off there. I think, especially for those human in the loop situation, you don't really need the 100% case or 99%. So, and in fact, in our case, what I found is useful is people actually appreciate you to do the automatic job for them for that hard part. Let's say there's a way to segment their workload. Let's say 80% of their job is a little bit hard, 20% is actually easier. For human, it's easier, but actually for LM, sometimes it's reverse. Because, let me give you an example. For insurance, there's something called, like, again, endorsement. Those very gnarly text in legal term. For human beings, it's super hard to comprehend those. That's something we call endorsement. But then for machine, actually, it's much easier. But then something easy for human is something we call limits, which is numeric fields. Basically, the insurance ones, like what I call it, we call that limits. Basically say, for this general aggregates, for general liability, in aggregate, you have 2 million. And per accident, you have 1 million, blah, 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 and all those. Those ones are very easy for people because you can quickly eyeball those. Somehow they are not that easy for us. This is something we need to talk. Anyway, but my point is, for machine, actually, that hard part is actually easier. So as long as you have the right prompting, and of course you need a lot of the preparation there for prompting and domain knowledge. But then my point is, you actually don't need 100% accuracy for those hard ones, because it's almost like people having this compassion there. It's like they cannot even get it 100%. They don't really expect machine to get it 100%. So that's why I mean, junior folks actually benefits a lot from those, and then if you have 80%, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually relates to the time to market. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is something we have seen and just want to share. We used to use LangChain a lot, which is a library for folks who don't know. It's a library in this community being used a lot. It was super popular back in 2023 initially. Maybe now it's not still popular, but the pros is it has something called Pydantic support to support some features in Python, and it has a great retrieval support. However, actually, it's just, there's a lot of abstraction in there. I think we actually started to ripping off a lot of LangChain. This is just one example in the framework, but there's a lot of framework flying around. Is that every single day in GitHub you will see a new framework every single day. So one takeaway we have is if folks are starting new, for example, even for you guys, if you start a RAP application, maybe start small and then you don't have to actually say, oh, I'm actually locking in one framework, because it takes time to rip them off, and also for new people to ramp up, I think it's a little bit trickier. So anyway. All right, so I think evaluation is the most time-consuming piece. Because for us, like I said before, it's just actually really hard to collect the ground truth data there. Maybe for you guys, I think you guys are definitely having the privilege and the benefits here. But for us, I think because we're collecting those ground truths from day zero, like we don't have the structured data before. So that is a super hard problem. And also, I think in the future for the agentic flow, a lot of those insurance industry, or maybe, I don't know, for some other industry, the standard operation procedure, the SOP, is actually buried in people's mind. I think the first thing a lot of us do, if we want to build an agentic flow, we're actually, as software engineers, we're actually diving into those operation flow manually, and to learn about those SOP. And then in order for us to craft the data and to do the final evaluation. So just want to call it out. We have tried several of those things for eval. Basically, we have a framework to actually rerun the evaluation after every single experimentation. I'm sure a lot of you guys have done that before. And we evaluate the individual stage after each experiment, because if there's a long pipeline, we try to evaluate stage by stage. And we started to consider using the synthetic data sets, because it's hard to actually just do the manual labeling. What I mean synthetic data, just give you one example, like let's say we have a question for the Benji. So let's say, how do I have this benefits in commuter benefits? You can actually ask that question in a different way, but then you should get the same answer. So we actually synthesize the question, but then fixate the answer. But you can also tweak them simultaneously. So basically, we use the golden set of the data to synthesize and generate more data for the ground truth. But we can talk about that more if you want. If you move to the next slide, please. LMS judge. That's something I think if you guys don't know, basically it's using another LM to evaluate the answer you have. This is actually used in a lot of the fine tuning, because it's like you basically use a more powerful one. Let's say you're using a 4.0 and the reasoning model actually to evaluate your non-reasoning model. So things like those. All right. So last slides, which is yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this is just sharing and probably this just trigger some discussion there, because this is a little bit for product managers, but I think the idea here is if there's no approval or override is needed, then something called agentic flow I think should be the goal there. Basically, I don't know if how many of you guys heard about this debate or conversation in the community saying service versus software. Basically, if the AI is there, and then should we just provide a service instead of SaaS? And then, at least my thinking here is, if the manual approval override is still needed, then probably we still should consider the SaaS model at least being part of the equation there. But if no approval, no override is needed, or very rarely needed, I think, or SOP is very clear, I think go forward with agentic flow. We can talk about example, but that's over the take. And but yeah, so that's all.
Nice. You want to take some one-on-one questions first?
Yeah.
Let's start. Yeah, actually, I have a few, but I'll just start with one. So on I think the first use case that you were showing, where I believe you get two different documents and you're comparing the two to see if like one actually sufficiently covers the other.
Yep.
How are you finding that the LLM? So when I've tried to use it in these kinds of scenarios, and I say like, hey, find the problems in this, it'll like usually always find problems even if there aren't any. How do you guys kind of experience that? And yes, or if yes, or if no, like what?
Do you mind maybe elaborate what you mean?
Sure.
Usually
So,
find the problem.
Yeah. I guess this was a while back, but I was just working on kind of a toy project, and I was looking at like LLMs for like patent invalidation. So like if I have this patent and this other patent, does one invalidate the other?
I see.
And so I think that's like quite a similar kind of use case to comparing, does this like insurance cover these like requirements?
I see.
And I saw that regardless of whether one patent would invalidate or wouldn't invalidate the other, usually the LLM would come up with some reason that it would. I was wondering like, how did you find like the reasoning capabilities of the LLM in this task when it like, did it always kind of false positive, or was it able to distinguish well when something wasn't actually an issue?
Got it, I see. I probably cannot comment on the reasoning part because for our case, it's more field to field. I probably shouldn't say field, but it's more like we treat it as a field to field comparison.
So it's very different.
Yeah, because we try to break it down to a very granular level. Like it's almost like, well, if you can go back to, there's a picture to show that, yeah, this one, yeah. So it's like this row actually mapped to this row directly. And then there's not really much reasoning per se. I think it's still more extraction.
Okay.
But what the extraction we're doing is, so we basically do an extraction for in something here, and then we have the structure data on this side, and then we're doing the comparison sort of field by field, almost field by field.
Okay, I understand. So you can kind of write the logic rules in manually almost, and not really. Or I see.
Yeah. But
or you can ask the LLM specifically field by field.
Correct. That's still more field to more data extraction, but there's some business logic built in there. But yeah.
I think you guys do something similar as well in the earlier use case where I guess someone has like an incumbent insurance and you evaluate that.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because I'm guessing that's less field by field, right? But
that's
more holistically evaluated?
That's still very field by field.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
That's still, and because a lot of those terms are very specific and then they're kind of individual terms, so those are still field by field.
Okay, so in developing this, did you kind of have to have like an expert who knew what those fields would be,
Correct.
kind of really guide that development process?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes. And then someone, I think what you guys did in the previous call is pretty inspirational, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think that's probably the direction a lot of these domains, having the subject domain of expert, probably we should try to do that. What we are doing is almost like working together with SME to define the ground truths first, because we don't have the ground truths, and then while developing the ground truths, I think then they will basically sit side by side with us to validate the naive prompt dev team, data science team actually write, and then because our data scientists actually having a lot of the insurance background, and then they actually over years gain a lot of those, but still they're not really day-to-day like work with the policy.
Mm-hmm.
So that validation is still there, but it's not like the democratizing like you guys did.
I had a question around the citation element. That's something that we worked on for a little bit, but we weren't actually able to return great citations. I think we were able to I think for us partly it was because the image that the LLM was processing was not the same thing as the location that it was returning from the user's document.
Yes.
Are you able to return a citation, I guess, number one, or is that like a future goal? And then how did you get around that problem of like the LLM's working on something that's different than what the human is seeing, so it's not quite the right citation?
Yeah, we do have that in the viewing contractor, but I don't have that screenshots there. There are two ways of doing that. We are doing, for this product, the way we did it is basically going back, it's kind of first getting this result and first getting the extraction result, then actually going back to another LM prompt to find that citation's location. That's how we are doing that in this product. So it's basically break that down into two stages. It's almost like you get the results, and then you are actually going back to in a totally separate LM call actually to prompt where is this in the document. Okay. And we found actually it's pretty accurate. Another thing we did is break the chunk very small. So then you actually adding the metadata to the chunk, and then if let's say you don't really need word-to-word citation, you more like need the chunk level citation, then that's probably good enough. Because then you when you do the retrieval, you know your chunk, and then when LM returns, you actually also ask LM to which chunk that is.
Yeah. I think for us too, it was like part of the trust conversation where we, sometimes people would have questions of like, how did the LLM return that so-and-so is the named insured?
Yes.
And we wanted to be able to show in the document where that came from. But we ultimately, I don't think we didn't quite solve it. So that was a big part of it for us, was trying to solve that trust problem.
Yeah, we can talk more about that,
Yeah, I think our big issue with that is coming from how rather than having chunks, we don't actually have the text because we pass the image, and then we want the citation on the image itself.
I see. I see.
Yeah, which is where like if we asked it like what part of the text did you get this from, it'll return that, but we tried to backtrack it to the part of the image.
Did you guys try, because I was talking to Wolf before, and have you guys tried asking about the bounding box?
Yep. Yeah, that was we did try that. It didn't sync up properly with where it actually was, and I think that's what Wolf was mentioning, where a lot of times on some of these APIs, it seems that if you send like an image, it gets rescaled on the API side, which is one factor, but that can kind of be reverse engineered through the documentation. But even after that, we weren't able to really get precise citations from that aspect. But I see how, I guess if you guys are chunking, then you can much more specifically get like where things are coming from.
This probably is a kind of a privilege we have, because most of our document doesn't need OCR, because we don't really deal with handwriting that much. We basically deal with a machine readable PDF.
So do you guys not usually get any scanned PDFs or anything like that?
Very small amount. I
Oh,
would
that's
say.
awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Wait, so just further on that, so if all of yours are like machine readable PDFs, like you're actually using the metadata from that PDF document?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you don't even have like vision capabilities, or?
We don't really use multimodal for now.
Oh, okay. Wow. That would be nice.
Yeah, so when we do the chunking, we started with naive chunking and then just by the number of the characters and then chunk it to 100 characters and so on. But later we moved to metadata-based chunking, basically using text structs from AWS or Redacto, and then you get the metadata for the PDF, and then you say I chunk by the paragraph and so on. So you get a much better chunking results. Yeah.
Okay,
So
got
we
it.
started doing that. Yeah.
And then one other question. I wasn't super clear from this. Maybe you touched on it and I missed it. But
No worries.
do you have a human in the loop like on your basically like document to structured data like process? Like in case like obviously the LLM is not going to be 100% accurate.
Yes.
So I guess like do you have someone there verifying it? And if so, like I assume like these aren't like real time. Like uploads, like if a borrower wants to see like their policy compared to like what they're required to have like immediately, like is that possible?
Yes. So great question. So these happen in real time. So these are async call, but actually the experience is real time. So there's a spinner actually. So it's real time. This whole process actually we do have we call this first signal. So basically we surface to the clients. Clients will immediately see, like I said, a lot of times they demand to get almost like first pass check. So if there's no major red flag, then I'm gonna sign my contract today. Because I'm not gonna wait for you to do a very thorough checking for me because I don't have time. But in the meantime, if they do have time, then we have a human in the loop. So we have a service team, they will receive a notification for this, and then they do the further processing, either validate this or even adding more signal to this. So we do have the human in the loop. We haven't really started the data ingestion project. We are doing it now, and that one we definitely pretty much like the Vontive's approach. So we definitely should have a document on the right hand side and the form on the left hand side. So so that's definitely should be there. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So when a borrower, or sorry, not a borrower, when I guess someone is uploading their insurance document and they want to see like if there's any issues, you're still, how long are those documents, I guess?
Yeah.
And
yeah, they can be, the longest one we have seen is 100 pages. And obviously it's just already over the context window, there's too many tokens to process. So we have some pre-processing basically to actually get the insurance related documents and or sections, because those contracts in this example, not really all of them actually relate to insurance. So you only need to get the insurance. So that could be semantic searching, could be even naive keyword searching, but so we definitely do the, I would say, pre-processing. Yeah.
so once, I guess you have, say, maybe a subset of 20 pages that are for insurance,
Yes.
Do you still require to chunk those, or can you not just stuff the entire thing in the context window?
Yeah, for this one, right now I think we try different ways. I think I need to go back to see the latest experimentation, but I think for at least 3 months ago, I think we're just throwing everything there, because right now it's I think recall is more important than the precision clause.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. But for the Benji example, the benefits assistant one, because that one doesn't really need real-time ingestion, because this one is basically ad hoc or on demand. I have a contract, I'll upload it, just check it for me as soon as possible. But for the benefits one, we we manage the insurance or benefits benefits plan for our clients. So we already have all of those. So that's why we can do a wrap. Basically, for that one, we do the chunking.
Yes.
And we use vector DB and all those things.
That makes perfect sense to me. Yep. That's awesome. And then one last thing on this. So you mentioned this particular product is real time. So I guess you show a spinner or something.
Yeah.
How long are you seeing it take for it, like from upload to fully processed?
Yeah, roughly 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then we basically have this asynchronous notification. We tell people you don't have to wait in this page, and so they can always come back to view and so on. So
that was definitely something, because when we first started doing it, like an initial kind of like friction was that, hey, it takes like 2 minutes. I want it like as soon as it comes in. But
yeah.
Fortunately, I guess it was valuable enough that they just changed their workflow to they'd upload and then go do something else and then come back for like a batch of documents to have in process.
Especially for internal operation, I think they always have so many tabs to navigate to. So as long as they can come back to it, and then we plan to in the future because we control this whole platform. This is called something called Navigator.
Sure.
So we can. I'm not sure how many of you guys have seen from the right top corner. You will have a notification, not really browser notification, but the web app notification.
Yep.
And then you just let you know your job is done, and then just go back to that. Yeah. So we do have the plan to do something like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That was outstanding. Thank you so much
Right.
for this fabulous presentation. I think now, we can probably move on to panel. So if Zach and Sahil and Joe, if you just want to take your seats here, we can start and see if there's any audience questions. But I have been monitoring our viewers, and we've gotten some submissions from the internet as well. So if there's anybody here who'd like to start us off, you are welcome to. Otherwise, okay, no, we're good. Otherwise, I can get back to those.
I think we're good on the in-persons.
Nice. Okay.
I did have another question though on the golden data set where you guys are synthetically generating data.
Golden ones are always manually crafted.
Yeah. Do you, I guess the question is, when you generate off like that golden data set, are you concerned that whatever distribution that you have in your golden data is just exactly what you're going to generate in your synthetic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that is still a challenge. So
yeah.
That's why we haven't really expand that too much.
Makes a lot of sense. I think that's like a fundamental challenge with synthetic generation.
Exactly.
Is like, how do you actually add noise that's meaningful?
Yes.
The first question we have here for our panel is, how do you stay up to date with changes, and how do you learn about new models or new papers that come out? Are you on AI Twitter? Like, how do you find it? And I think we can go. Well, let's start with Zach, Sahil, and Joe, and obviously you can skip if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sahil, you're like way more in depth in.
I'm on AI
Twitter.
Yeah,
so you go.
That's definitely. Twitter is a great one to see what's going on. I don't know why that's been chosen by tech as the place where people decide to post a lot, but it is. There's some good, like, LinkedIn's interesting sometimes. There's some newsletters you can kind of subscribe to. And then the other thing is, if you just visit like the main API providers, because those are the guys who are really probably going to put out the most impactful to your business changes. It's always great to see a cool paper come out, and probably once every month you'll see, oh, this paper is going to revolutionize AI, but will it actually make a difference in your product? Probably not. But when Anthropic decides that they have a new model that does something sweet, then you might actually listen.
For me, yeah, I definitely do a lot of Twitter reading there. And one more thing I want to add is, I don't know how many of you guys watch or listen to podcasts. There are good ones, like something called AI debriefing. It's like very fastly actually just going through what happens last week, because trust me, they have enough things to talk about in 20 minutes and with a very fast pace. So it's a great workout listening.
What was the name of the podcast again?
It's called the AI debriefing, I think.
Debriefing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. Another one that comes to us are where do you think for your industry AI should go? Whether or not you're working on that right now, what are you excited for?
Yeah, I think like for us, I mean honestly, Charles's question I thought was a great like future case of where we can go. You know, just further building on the agentic workflows and specifically like the like automating that data verification. I think is like a really fascinating opportunity because like not only is a lot of time for our operators, like a lot of time our operators are spending on, you know, data ingestion and, you know, reading documents, but there's also like a very significant amount of time that is spent like back and forth contacting like insurance agents or title agents or, you know, the county tax board or whatever, just to like confirm or verify data. So kind of automating that process as well, I think would, you know, at least for us, would have like a massive time savings as well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Zach. And for context, Charles is our CEO, so his direction is kind of where we're looking to go. But absolutely, I think kind of agentizing more and more of the actual process that is right now done manually, whether that be actually reaching out to different sources for data or all of the extractions that we're kind of already doing or calculations. I think a really cool development recently is like the MCP servers from Anthropic. For context, what that actually is a layer that can go between your LLM and any product with like a REST API and kind of allow it to use that API and understand every call that can be made and how it can really use that product. So there's been some really cool demos lately of like Blender, which is like a graphics software, being controlled by an LLM, and it does a decent job through one of these MCP servers. And I think for Vontive specifically, we have many products that are built as traditional REST based products, and connecting the LLM to be able to use these, for example, to price out different scenarios of a loan before actually underwriting through that entire loan would be a really interesting future agentic use case.
Yeah, for us, I definitely second that because we, in insurance, the traditional insurance brokerage, they actually work in their inbox. And so a lot of the insurance agents or brokerage firms, they don't even have the Salesforce or task management. So they basically treat the email inbox as their tracking correspondence, but also sometimes decision-making place. So one example is like, like I said before, they need to find the right matching for their clients. So they need to go to a lot of, we call insurance carriers. So those correspondence actually is a golden mine there because a lot of the knowledge, for example, which carrier having this appetite to this type of client profile in this industry. All those things are actually in inbox. So how to basically data mining and then using LM actually to understand that knowledge and then building the agentic flow directly for our case, probably within the inbox.
Yeah.
Because that is something I was talking about, service versus the software. Because in the past, there was thinking to actually create the tool software to help people and then people to use those tools to automate or to digitize things fast. But then what if certain type of action can be fully autonomously done? And then, of course, maybe with people's, because email will not go away. I think still, like when carrier and brokerage in insurance industry talk to each other, they still use inbox and they still use emails. But there is a plan, there is experimentation on our side. We started to using inbox and having the basically robot to using an alias. You don't know who's actually behind that inbox, and then talking to the carrier. Who knows, maybe someday carrier also advanced. Maybe we were talking to their robot carriers, underwriters.
Just all robots.
Yeah, it's very possible, but so because we already started trying that out, so I think that's the direction there.
I think it's really interesting too, because I think that use case of matching, it traverses over many industries. Like even at Vontive, at the end of the day, we're matching a loan to like a capital partner and under their pricing guidelines. And it sounds very, very similar to kind of matching like someone who's asking for insurance to a provider.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. That is another use case that we've actually like talked about too. Is that, I mean, like our capital partners guidelines are just incredibly complicated, and every different partner has their own very, very specific use cases.
Yes.
So like being able to like have an LLM digest an entire like 100-page guide and turn that into a set of rules that the loan would have, like that to us would be, you know, a really interesting use case as well.
Yeah. For example, in our case, I think we call that insurance carriers explicit appetite, because they actually publish those guides and they call it appetite. But there is something called implicit appetite. They say something, but they don't really follow that. And then those implicit ones actually embedded, or they always lie in the historical email correspondence and exchange, or maybe something happening right now. And then how to actually harvest those, that's actually going to be super interesting. And then I think in the past, I think we have this knowledge base, we try to capture those in a structured way, but maybe we can do it even in an unstructured way, and then maybe even do it in a real-time fashion, and then to apply it to the future, we call that placement decision. Like, oh, I only go to this one because they seems okay with that probably 2-3 days before with the previous placement. I have just seen the previous agents actually place that, and then they seems okay with that, and I'm gonna try it out. So
like really making the agent expert in the domain.
Correct.
Like something that an insurance person or an expert might know that, hey, there's this implicit kind of thing where this provider might accept this insurance, even if it's not explicit.
Correct.
You want the agent to learn that as well.
Yes.
Very cool.
We still have some more here, but any okay. So there's two more in here that are, I'm gonna just bring them together. They're both about like accuracy, basically. The first one is if your AI system automates too much of the work, does your organization lose expertise, and can it no longer check the AI's work after a while? And then the second part of that is basically, what if you run out of like human generated data if you have a like we in the Vontive showed, the Vontive example showed that we had like ground truth. Will you eventually run out of like recent ground truth if you've automated everything?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure. So I do think, it's an interesting problem, because you kind of might fall into some self-fulfilling prophecy. This is something we've actually spoken about recently, where if we, for example, had an agent who only allows certain kinds of loans in that it thinks are explicitly allowed based on our capital partners' guidelines, and it rejects everything else, maybe there are loans that would have been accepted in the rejected group, but we'll never even know that because they're already rejected, because we've automated that process. And then additionally, even for the data extraction, if you do end up taking that human element out at the end, at what point do you know whether your ground truths are even the truth or not, or if they're just previous extractions and you're training a new model on the old model's biases? That is definitely an interesting question. I think we're probably decently far away from humans losing all expertise or abilities. So I don't think that's like a primary concern at this particular moment. But I will say, even from a software engineering perspective, and you guys are more than welcome to hop in on this as well. We were actually talking about it before the talk with some of the in-person audience here. But even myself, I've seen that certain like syntactical parts of coding, I've kind of just relied on like LLMs now to just like, hey, I don't really remember how to use this library. Can you just do it for me? And there is probably some point where you should kind of make sure you still understand how to use these kinds of tools. So I'm not sure if there's a particular answer that I have to that problem, But I think it's far enough away that it's not a worry in this instant, but I could see it definitely being a worry even 3 to 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think like, kind of echoing that, like we definitely don't envision anytime soon like completely removing humans in the loop. I think, that's always going to be an important aspect to mitigate this, inherent bias that, AI could then develop if they are the only ones doing the work, and then also self-checking their own work, that could lead to a dangerous scenario. And humans just, at least as the technology stands right now, have far more ability to like complex reason and understand nuances that, AIs just don't have that ability yet. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting question. The way I'm thinking is, if let's take data ingestion as an example. Let's say forget about the OCR problem. For us, if let's say insurance doesn't really change at all, then I think then that means you don't really need a human intervention anymore. Because let's say it's almost like if the document text, nothing changed, then theoretically you basically continue to use your previous model and your previous data evaluation sets. But then if something actually changed, let's say in my previous example, cyber insurance keep evolving because this whole new world, because imagine 5 years ago, there's not even an AI related cyber term. So now actually people are talking about it. So all those things, if they have new products, new things in, let's say, insurance world, then you need human experts there to interpret it. And for data labeling, for actually helping us to develop the prompt, the products. And then the way I'm thinking is like, then let's say this type of products actually getting more and more stable, then probably human experts moved on to the next new thing there. So it's like not really eliminating, but it's more like moving to something new. Yeah.
Another kind of aspect as well to that is a little bit about what we were talking about earlier, and something that we've conversed about at Vontive is constructing verifiable tasks as what we actually give to the LLM. So I think within organizations that are trying to solve like having LLMs code complex tasks, the way that they're really doing that, Leet code, for example, if anyone's familiar with, is you have like a test that tests the like state space of like your code, right? And the LLM can generate some code and then run the test, and then if it fails, then it can edit the code and then run the test, and then if it fails, and it can keep doing this until it passes. Reframing problems such that we have a verifiable way to actually check the outputs of an LLM is something that could be like a path forward in that. It is difficult though, because not all problems are inherently verifiable. Like if we're just pulling out data that we don't know what it could even be, then how can you verify it? But if it's something like automating the loan underwriting process and making sure that the loan that was actually underwritten falls well within like the capital guidelines and these kinds of things, you can make discrete kind of comparisons, very similar to how you guys did with the contract comparisons. You can program like discrete logic rules to check against what the LLMs actually created and know that those will be like complete.
Nice. Audience question.
Yeah, so both of you have problems which are essentially that all these things are like paper documents still, right? Like they're all just getting passed around as PDFs or just scanned or whatever, right?
Yes.
And like the inherent underlying problem is that you don't have a data source of truth that you can go like grab this from, right? You can't go query the King County record system library and the like, whatever else, to just gather all of this data, right? In a world where we're able to throw enough resources to like build those systems where you can go and say, oh, for this particular piece of data, I just need to go query, the MLS system to get the official street name or something, right? Like are there still parts or pieces of documentation that you can think of where, yeah, we're never going to be able to get a server that would return us this data, and we're always going to have this sort of LLM like system to ingest it?
I think if we had an ideal world, we probably wouldn't need the AI really, right? If every organization that we got our data from had a nice like Postgres server that we could just hit, and then every CAPM partner used Boolean logic to define like their actual guidelines, like we could just have a closed form solution for everything, and then we wouldn't worry about like a human overwriting or anything. Like in fact, we'd probably just need one employee who like collects a paycheck and just runs the software. I don't know if that will, realistically, that would be great if it were to go to that way. And I can see like a lot of organizations evolving into being able to create better infrastructure given how well LLMs kind of accelerate at least programming personally on like a startup scale when you're trying to develop things fast. Whether there will actually be like a push for that or if bureaucratic pressures will not ever allow that to happen, I would probably say it's going to be the latter, just because I don't see like a lot of these agencies modernizing that quickly, even if the tech is there for them to just modernize instantly.
I have to say that I'm not worried about the county tax board using agents to answer your email.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Nor building a public-facing API.
I wish I could show you some of the counties that and some of the tax reports they use. The worst I've ever seen is a county just email you your like some guy wrote it out on an email and just, this is your tax report. It's like some rural county where like one guy named Phil decides that this is your tax. Yeah. And so I don't think Phil's gonna make a Postgres server anytime soon.
That's awesome. I think we have time for one more. We're butting up against 7:30 here. This one comes to us. Panelists have talked about not wanting to lock in. If there was one LLM provider that looked like a good bet to lock in on, who do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would probably say at this point it would be Anthropic and their Claude suite of models. I mean, we've tried Llama, we've tried some other providers as well, and we have definitely found that Anthropic is like far and away the best right now, at least for our use case. I'm sure, other models have their own like special niches, but at least for what we are seeing, like Anthropic seems to be the leader.
In totality or just like cost per token?
I mean, just in terms of like the performance of it, there's certainly cheaper models out there.
But there's not like is there more expensive ones that are just way too expensive? That's why you're not switching?
Some of the reasoning models offered by OpenAI are more expensive on a token basis, I think. I think Anthropic, another thing that just goes well with them is their developer experience is very nice, which maybe some of the models don't have. Again, I would say I don't think locking in is a great choice. Mm-hmm. In fact, for our product itself, we basically built it's kind of exactly what you said, where you were like, there's too many abstractions in many of the frameworks, which is we originally started developing using frameworks, and then we decided hey, these guys are trying to do way too much that we just don't need. So we built our own simple universal API layer that lets us interact with any client we want. It takes 10 minutes to read API documentation and whip up a client for connecting to that specific service, and then you just use your API key. And we really like having that flexibility, because I do think these days providers just instantly someone might just come out with the best thing, and you want to be able to use that as soon as possible. And then there is also this good push from the provider side. I don't know if you guys saw it with DeepSeek, for example. When they released, they just took OpenAI's API. So if you had OpenAI as your provider, you could simply switch your API key, and all of the API calls would just send to DeepSeek. And on their side, they just made it compatible so that you could just instantly switch. So I think there's pressure from both sides to make it very easy to switch. And so I guess if I had to lock in, I'd probably do Anthropic right now, but I wouldn't lock in is mainly where I'd
I think the same here for us. We have, I think probably last year there are a lot of the framework doing this something called model routing. But even that, I think it's a relatively straightforward, simple thing for now. So we also have internal in-house implementation to basically, for us to do experimentation easier, basically we can switch from one model A to model B if we want to actually try out different things, or we actually treat it as a fallback in case something. Actually, they actually have some issues from time to time. So, so we do have this kind of fallback. Yeah, I think when I say probably locking, it's more like not really locking into the framework instead of the model, because the model is more commoditized for now.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think, I guess, to revise one thing I said, if you had to build a program based on something and you didn't want to interact with APIs directly, there's a library called Open Router, which your routing reminded me of that. And what they do is they basically conglomerate all the models across different providers. And so AWS, for example, provides Claude models. Anthropic also provides Claude models, and then probably some other, maybe Azure or something, I don't know. Other Google Cloud Platform provides maybe Anthropic's models. And what Open Router does is, like, it'll first hit whichever one has the most uptime, and if it fails, it'll switch to the next one, and if it fails, it'll switch to the next one, like, by itself. The reason we particularly didn't decide to go with that or think that's the best is, say, for example, Anthropic added citation support in January. That's still not there in Open Router. Whereas we can add that in 5 minutes if we just look at their documentation and decide to add that into our own client interface. It's not too like challenging to come up with like a REST API interface. So.
All right. Well, everybody, a final round of applause for your panel. And I think with that, we have concluded the first of many future innovation forums. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Give you a handshake as well.
Yeah.
It's fun.